Yes, pod pickers! Hello! All right, glad you made it. Welcome back after the new year. We're here once again with a golden crop of video podcast clips to get you right on track. The podcast world hasn't slowed down, it's just got louder. So we've been cutting through the noise and wrapping them up for you like peas in a pod. Here is top of the podders. Some cryogenic stuff here. Let's waste no more further ado. First to bat, dopamine. The real host of every podcast, Stephen Bartlett gets some expert advice for parents from a dopamine expert. Just making the top 4. Is woke racism over? And where should Sam's daughter go to college? At 3, why the past is less anxious. Expert insight from the professor and granddad Williamson. Romesh Ranganathan hosts his fellow comedian and podcast godfather on the early days. And sitting proud at 1, a clash of the Greek titans. What were the final words of the man upstairs?
Oh, come on, flip again. You gonna flip or not? Come on, Bartlett.
Just getting back to our early conversation about digital media and the dangers therein. So a Pew survey report just came out asking parents how they navigate exposing their kids to smartphones. And in the cohort of parents who said that, yes, they do let their children under the age of 5 play with a smartphone, when they were asked why did they do that or in what circumstances, one of the top reasons was to soothe their child when their child was unhappy or distressed in some way. Now, I found that very concerning because that is basically setting up the child for the perception action loop of using internal distress as a cue for reaching for a smartphone, which works. It definitely works in the short term. But the problem, again, is that through this iterative process of neuroadaptation, ultimately that smartphone will not be sufficient. And now the kid will need a smartphone and, I don't know, an AI tailored pet who will do whatever they want whenever they want it. And then by the time the kid is 8, that won't be sufficient. And the kid will need, I don't know, a slot machine or whatever it is. It's this escalating phenomenon. Again, I hate judging parents because parenting is hard. And I've made many mistakes in my parenting, But and I'm sure the parents have the best of intentions. But instead of, navigating, finding a way to communicate with their child to figure out how to know what's going on in that child's life, which can be hard to do because, even young children aren't necessarily willing to disclose. But once they get to be teenagers, forget it. Then you got to wait until they're ready to tell you, which is almost always at 10 p.m. at night when you're exhausted after you've been working all day, right? And then you've got this really weird additional loop where now the parents are finding out about their child's life through reading and observing her interactions with the AI. So it's like a game of telephone. Now they've filtered this thing where they think they know what's going on in their child's life, but of course they don't. And none of that has gone toward fostering a relationship between those parents, and their child.
So with all this said, and with the knowledge that these algorithms are going to get more addictive because AI is going to know me more and more and more, and actually the commercial model behind any of these big technology companies is to keep my attention on their product more so they can deliver more ads or they can charge me a higher subscription fee. Are you at all hopeful? Because I can't see from an incentive perspective when we're talking about, the commercial models behind these companies, why things are going to stop and go back.
I mean, I agree with you. The genie's out of the bottle. We're not going to go back, but I am hopeful because I think I'm just a realistic optimist. I do believe in the human capacity to adapt and solve problems. And the simple fact that we're talking about these problems now, which we weren't doing, 10, 15 years ago, I think is a good thing. There's much more awareness in the population about the potential dangers of digital media. And at the forefront of raising the alarm has been parents, because parents are seeing the sort of disintegration of the nuclear family in real time, and they don't like it.
If that was your cup of tea, Dr. Anna has some great advice for you on the full podcast. In at 4, writer and linguist John McWhorter reflects on his efforts to battle woke racism in the 2 ways he knows how.
And there is a guy who I am sure is a nice person in real life. His name is Philip Ewell, and he is a black musicologist who has taken the music study world by storm ever since the troubles in 2020, with this idea that music theory is inherently racist. And I'm going to avoid getting into the weeds of why that idea doesn't make sense, but it doesn't make any more sense than it sounds, where there's this impulse to pretend that something like that is true, which then is also affecting certain curricular decisions. That's what I have a hard time seeing going away, but I might lack optimism. How do you feel?
Well, I really don't have a point of view or a practical, insight into any of this. I just have a lot of hope that we reached a tipping point some, couple of years ago, and we're probably the 2020 the abject failure of Kamala Harris's attempt to become president, with its apotheosis being her inability to disavow her former support for taxpayer-funded gender reassignment surgery for incarcerated illegal immigrants. That was the moment where I felt that the political liability of these far left shibboleths and the inability to just reason from some common sense principles, I just felt that it became so excruciating and so unpragmatic, certainly politically, that I just have to hope that was the high watermark, and things are quickly recalibrating in millions of brains, and have been ever since. But I really don't have any I certainly don't have any direct insight within the ivory tower about this. I have a daughter who will be going to college, hopefully in a year. But I'm in the strange situation of not even knowing where I would hope she would get in, given what the noises I've just heard you make. Is there anything you're not doing that in the dead of night you think maybe you should be doing, or if you had more allies you could be doing?
That's an interesting question. I consider it my duty to just repeat over and over that what all of these dust-ups have in common is this rather peculiar idea that battling power differentials must be the central goal of any kind of academic or artistic or judicial endeavor. It's that rather mundane seeming thing that can take you from the George Floyd protests to, the kids, all but supporting what Hamas did out of an idea that was the right thing to do because Israel is quote unquote white and imposed upon the region by whiteness. It's that again and again. And, it has to be like Madison Avenue. You can't say something once and expect there to be any kind of effect. You have to just keep at it for years and years and years. And I think my job is just to keep at that, because the idea is to understand what the general pattern is, not to shake your fist at the particulars of each one. I just see the same thing happening over and over. There's a part of me that thinks that I should be the sort of person who, after woke racism, I had to stop the podcasting after a certain point. I told my publisher I cannot do it again after about 100. Maybe I was supposed to do like 500 shows. Maybe I should have decided that for the next few years, or maybe the next 20, I'm just going to do that message as much as I can, instead of side projects that I do, and instead of at least pretending that I'm still a linguist, et cetera. Sometimes I think that I'm not doing the job. But the problem, Sam, is that I crave variety, and I wrote woke racism in a fury. I continue to stand behind it, but I'm not the kind of person who could just keep doing woke racism again and again and again for 20 years. And maybe I'm a little guilty about it, but not that guilty.
We think you'll both be remembered as key players. Make no mistake, the rest of the pod has some great topics covered. So go check it out. Third up, Chris Williamson is delving into modern anxiety and how his granddad was more zen.
So many of them are basically around, I really struggle with the uncertainty of the future.
Yeah.
Like tolerating ambiguity, uncertainty, unpredictability feels like some weird personal curse.
Yeah. So uncertainty is a problem. Risk isn't, by the way. Risk and uncertainty are different, and people use them interchangeably. Uncertainty means you don't know what might happen, so you can't assign probabilities, so you can't manage contingencies. Risk is that you know what might happen, so you can assign probabilities, so you can manage contingencies. That's the reason that people feel better when they buy insurance. Insurance is a happiness business. What it does is it converts uncertainty into risk, and it no longer becomes a source of misery.
Mm-hmm.
That's why anybody who buys a life insurance policy feels better after they do it, because they've just turned their uncertainty into risk. Uncertainty is a source of fear, and that stimulates the amygdala, because the amygdala says it makes you hypervigilant. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, you're more vigilant than you would have been otherwise. And that's a source of negative emotion. So you're feeling this constant sort of negative emotion.
Why is vigilance a source of negative emotion?
Because you're vigilant against threat. And it's the possibility of threat. When you're uncertain, it's funny because, there's all kinds of uncertainty that we don't worry about at all, right? Uncertainty, like things might be great. You're not worried about that, right? It's funny because, I do a lot of stuff on waiting. Waiting is a funny thing. There's waiting that's wonderful. That's like I'm waiting for Christmas. And the reason that the Christmas lights go up in America after Halloween is because we want to savor the season longer, because we want to wait longer. And that's positive. There are certain things that might happen and might not. And so we're anxious about it, but anxious in kind of a happy way, in an optimistic way. There are certain things that might go wrong and might be okay, but might be terrible. That's like tests from the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's real anxiety. And then there's the one that it's going to be bad. That's dread. And so there's a whole range
suite of different uncertainties. How, just on that, how likely do you think it is that the ancestral evolutionary zebras don't get ulcers explanation for it comes and it goes and you shake it off? Do you think that was ancestrally accurate? You think that was like the
Yeah, I think it was. I don't think they didn't have Twitter, and so they weren't sitting around going, I wonder how that tweet did.
I understand on that, but what about the chronic that guy in the next cave keeps eyeing up my missus, and that this has been going on for a long time? Male parental uncertainty, the fear of abandonment from a male partner from a new mother. Those things have
always existed for sure.
And would that not cause this sort of chronic stress?
Not chronic stress in the same way. It was a much sort of simpler, understimulated kind of environment. It's not that long ago, by the way. I mean, I'll tell you what Grandpa Williamson never said to Grandma Williamson. I had a panic attack behind the mule today. No, it wasn't a thing.
What drives panic attack?
It's a flooding of the HPA axis. Is the adrenal system goes berserk. It becomes incredibly dysregulated. And when you have a lot of time without devices, and you're doing a job that's relatively repetitive, and your brain is working the way it's supposed to, so the default mode network is on, and when the right hemisphere of your brain is properly activated, which is the part that questions mystery and meaning, the why questions in your life, you're not going to be freaking out all the time. And that's what people are doing, is they're freaking out all the time because they're constantly distracted and they're overstimulated. That's what it comes down to.
Is this an argument to chop wood and carry water more?
Yeah. Well, it's an argument to live more like Grandpa Williamson, actually. It's but which is not ordinary anymore. That's the problem. He didn't have to think about it, but we do.
Grandpa Williamson did also, I think he went to the Falklands War. He caught some tropical disease in the Falklands War. So
he fought in the Falklands War?
I think it was the Falklands, yeah.
That's really.
Yeah.
That was that's a real source of meaning for these guys. Is that they did these things, they did these hard things, and he wasn't looking at his phone the whole time.
No, that's
and
true.
he wasn't posting, his Falklands War pictures to Instagram. I mean, his life was, in a way, more simpler.
Grandpa Williamson would have been even more chilled if he could have had access to this podcast. And Grandma too, narrowly pipped to the pod post. We must surely give a nod to the podfather himself as he reminisces on early podcasting practice.
I mean, everyone's got one now. It's no different. It's like...
I know, but it is different because I think that, the ones that are coming out now, I think that there was a point after which people were doing podcasts because the right thing to do was to have a podcast, right? Whereas when you when you guys did it, that could have gone for nothing. Do you know what I mean?
It did. The reason, the very first of all I heard of it, I was on XFM, and they were talking about their streaming U2's concert as a podcast. And I thought, podcast, what's that? Well, you just put it on the internet. Oh, all right. Okay, great. And I thought, that's good. So it's on the internet. So it's global, which excited me. This was live. I thought, well, I said, could you do it? Could you pre-record it and put it out? I went, yeah, you can do anything like that. And I kept having to leave the show to go and film something, like a sitcom or a movie or something, and then going, oh, we're back in the... So I thought, well, I can just do these when I want, put them out. We can say what you want. Oh, my God, that was the most exciting thing. No restrictions. You can say what you want. And it broke the record. Well, of course it did. There was only about 9 doing it, you know. We did that, and we were getting like 250,000 per episode, which is amazing. 2005, whatever it was. And Carl wanted to leave his job, and I said, let's charge £1, then we can all. And immediately it was like 20,000 something. You know what I mean? But we found out that it was always 20,000, however many we did. So that's when we started doing, well, let's do another series. Let's do that. So every time you did one, and then it started to grow gradually. It's all about social media anyway now. You know what I mean? That's our shop window.
Yeah, and it feels like it feels exciting, and it's sort of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you take out gatekeepers, you know, in terms of like anybody who wants to put something out there can. Yeah. But then the downside of that is
it's like no quality draw.
Yeah. There's no quality control, right?
Well, no, but you know, it's like anything else. You know, the cream floats to the top. You know, there might be 1,000 podcasts, but most people listen to 10 of them. It's still, you know, it's like anything else. You know, there's a million posters up, but you're only going to go see one band.
You can have a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah.
But I think you have to curate it to go.
That's exactly right.
I'm going to deliberately look for people that hold opposing, not exclusively, but I need to have a balance so that I actually know what's going on. I'm not going to get surprised by, you know.
The good bit of advice is don't scroll, search. Yes. So if you're interested in something, if you want to look something up, if you want to read something, search. Don't just scroll, because that evil little machine is doing it. It's going, oh, he likes this. Oh, he likes this. Show him that. Show him that.
From Romesh to the ancient Romans, let's step back in time, right into a fierce argument between two eminent Greek scholars. This gets a tad spicy, pod pickers. The past is so bright, they gotta wear shades.
When archaeologists open up a new library, Rome, we're in Rome, right? What would you think would be written in these libraries?
Dwelling Romans, right?
Friggin' Latin, right? Because they're Romans? No, it's majority Greek with some Latin. The amount that we have that survives is so much that I've been doing Greek for 35 plus years. You've been doing Greek for what?
Yeah, over 20.
Over 20. And between the two of us, we should both know all the authors then, if there's not, you know.
But we never will, because there's just always more.
No, but we never will. There's so much.
Here's the thing. As you know, Jesus didn't write anything down, right? So all the stories we have about Jesus are somebody talking about him at a later date.
Right.
But when they're writing about him, they're writing about him in Greek because that was the colonial cosmopolitan language, and they want their message to get out.
Okay.
All right. So Jesus was not a Greek guy. He was a Jewish guy. You agree with that, right, Ammon? I mean, I guess you already said you don't know who Jesus was.
Greek is not an ethnicity;
You know,
it's a language. Jesus was a dude
It's a colonial language.
Greek fluently, and he was in Egypt, so he probably studied in Alexandria, and he would have been studying Greek, not Hebrew. The question is, why does Jesus or anybody in the New Testament never quote Hebrew?
Quotes Aramaic. Several times. In fact, the only times in the New Testament, in the Gospels, of course, when Jesus is directly quoted,
how many
at least a handful, right? Because they only quote
at least a handful, and a couple of those are ones that we think, right? that we think may be Aramaic.
No, they are. It's pretty clear if you know Aramaic that it's Aramaic.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
It is.
And we're going to keep going back to
No,
this
it's
every
science.
time.
It's
every
science.
time
Look, it's science. It
right.
either is clearly Aramaic or it's not.
Okay, you want me to say it this way? It is clearly Aramaic.
It's clearly Aramaic.
Clearly Aramaic.
Lama sabachthon.
Okay.
That's when they say.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
That's
Can
when
we put
they
this
say.
up? Yeah, Mark 27. Mark 15, I believe, is when Jesus gets quoted saying, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani."
Right.
Where, yeah, a little more. There it is. They even put it in italics. Okay, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Okay, they put it in italics. So Jesus is being directly quoted as saying this, and then they have to translate it because that's not Greek.
My God,
why have you forsaken me? So Mark is writing in Greek, but he's quoting Jesus saying
so
something
he's writing
Aramaic
in Greek and he's interrupting his Greek to
say something Aramaic.
To say something Aramaic.
Because Jesus is saying his final words in Aramaic because that was his native language.
He
He gives us the exact
he
Aramaic.
says it in Aramaic.
That's Aramaic.
That's Aramaic,
no, but
right?
he doesn't say it's in Aramaic.
Elsewhere, there's another quote where he says, in Hebrew, Jesus said.
Okay, but here he's not
We can look at
saying
that if you
this
want.
is an
If
Aramaic.
that's important
Why does
to
it
you.
matter
Okay,
if he
watch
did,
this.
why would it matter if he says it? If it's
'Cause it's
written
clearly
in
Aramaic.
if it's in Aramaic, why does he have to say it's Aramaic?
Because it's written in Aramaic is your conclusion.
Okay, go ahead. Argue against
It's
me.
not. It's
That's
go
not
back to
Aramaic.
the Greek.
So
go
that's
back
not-
to the
yeah,
Greek.
go back to
Wait,
the Greek.
Go
Go back
back
to
to the
the
Greek
Greek. It's not
text.
Aramaic.
Let's see. Maybe it's not Aramaic. Is it possible?
Well, it's written in Greek letters.
Is it possible it's not in
I'm all ears.
Aramaic?
I am
Bring
all
me
ears.
the text. Right? Scholars entertain discussion, right? There,
There it is.
stop.
Right up. That
Blow
right there.
that
right
up,
there.
that last
That right
word.
there.
That last word
Sabachthani.
before the
Sabachthani.
semicolon. And remember,
Yeah.
there's your semicolon. Wait, just
Yeah,
show me.
That's not a semicolon. That's a question mark.
Right.
In Greek, you write question marks to semicolons.
Right? And who put that in? Some Byzantine nerd. The Greeks didn't put that in.
That's
Who
true.
wrote
I mean,
this.
all the punctuation is later.
Right. You can see both the roots for Saba, that worship, and the Chthonian divinity that is the Christing head, the Ion, who is the person inside the synagogues that is pictured on the walls of the synagogues, the god Ion. That is Saba of the Chthon. This is used in magic. Jesus is from the cross using magic Greek. And he's talking about that God that induces that transfer from death to resurrection.
Are you talking about sebomai? To
Yes,
worship?
sebomai is the verb.
So that's a different
But here
word.
the Saba, no, this is the same.
Spelled differently, too.
Sabaoth, the God,
That's
your
different
Sabbath.
altogether.
He's going to say it's
That's
Hebrew.
also Hebrew.
It's
Of course it's
See?
Hebrew.
I told you.
Yeah, 'cause I'm
it's
right.
the same thing. Where is the literature that backs you up?
What do you mean the literature that
Where's
backs me
the
up?
literature outside the Bible that backs you up? Because I can give you literature outside of this that backs this
We've
up.
already been over this mythological
It doesn't
territory. We're just
exist.
beating a dead horse.
It doesn't exist.
Because it got
though.
burned to the ground.
No, it doesn't exist.
'Cause
You
it got burned
don't
to the
have
ground.
evidence that it exists. You don't have any Hebrew literature that's going to use the term Sabbath. What you have is Greek, and you have Greek in the magical. You have Greek that is telling us. Even the pharmacology does this.
His reasoning for that is because he thinks it all got hit. Well, he says we know it all got burned down, burned to the
Magically
ground.
got disappeared.
All the libraries are gone.
There was nothing
magically got
magic. It was
disappeared.
imperialism.
If your evidence got magically disappeared, it's easy to make whatever argument you want. The
Sure,
fact
you can
is,
say that.
We have Greek evidence that where these roots are coming from.
What are you talking about?
Okay, sabachthon. When you look in the PGM, we're just talking about the PGM. You've worked with professors who helped translate it, right?
Sure.
And so did I.
Yeah, go on.
You might need to gather the full context for that last exchange, Pod Pickers. It's all Greek to me. As always, links are below for you to follow your beak. As the year ahead opens up, we'll turn our attention to the conversations being written in real time. The next batch is already lining up to be pure magic. So keep with TOTP for the most soulful slices. Stay gold, pod fans.